From the Shed End podcast, episode 35. Big weekend just gone. Dropped some points, but let's start with the introductions. Obviously, Theo, as always, is joined with me. How you doing, Theo?
Yeah, I'm good. It was a bit of a disappointing weekend, but we can thank some other teams that got the results. In the other Premier League games. But yeah, it was a disappointing game at Stamford Bridge overall, which we'll touch upon later.
Yeah. We're joined, obviously, new face on the channel today. Do you want to just introduce yourself and let the listeners know who you are?
Yeah. My name is Haider. Hardcore Chelsea fan from young, and it's actually a pleasure to be on. So thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, and it's definitely going to be beneficial to have a third voice because obviously it's normally me and Theo, and yeah, good to get a third perspective and maybe disagree with us as well at times as well, which is what we're here for. So for anyone who's listening on Apple or Spotify and you're not looking to find us on YouTube at the moment, you can see our socials at the very bottom of the screen, but it's at From the Shed End on Twitter. Search us on YouTube as well. Instagram's slightly different. It's at From the Shed End with underscores between each of the words. So just give us a like, subscribe, comment, all of that stuff as well, and interact with us. But let's get straight into it. It's a tough watch. Unfortunately, I missed the Burnley game. I didn't get to see it live, so I had to catch the highlights. But it was a tough watch, man. It was really bad. So Theo, I'll start with you. What was your thoughts? I think you was at the game, wasn't you? So what was your thoughts on Burnley?
Yeah, I was there. I walked to Stamford Bridge, still thinking that my 2-0 prediction would be quite accurate. We both agreed on 2-0 last week. Given that this Burnley side have been quite weak in the opening weeks of the Premier League, and it started off so well. It was dominant. We had so much of the ball. I think very very early on, Hudson-Odoi had a really good chance. Pope was brilliant. To be fair, he was why he's in England regular in the squad, hasn't been called up recently, but he showed why he should be, among those three keepers that is called up to England. But from our side, it was just poor. We weren't clinical enough. It was kind of the story of the last few games we had last season, I suppose, when we were winning games 1-0, 2-0, 2-1. It's just not clinical enough. I can think of a handful of chances which we should be burying and putting in the back of the net. I see a lot of people on Twitter, pointing the finger to Ross Barkley for his chance that he missed. But I actually think he had a really, really good game. Yeah, he was very good. He was creating chances. He was driving the ball up the pitch. And maybe behind Reece James, he was potentially our man of the match. So credit to Ross Barkley. But the one highlight from the game was the goal, I thought. It was a brilliant goal. Absolutely brilliant delivery from Reece James and Kai Havertz. Now I think his third goal of the season with his head. So he's showing, with the absence of Lukaku, that he's got that aerial ability, which we've spoken about in previous episodes, and he is a threat with his head. But overall, it's disappointing. I came back to my flat, and my housemate who missed the game asked me what did Chelsea do, and I said we lost. Then I had to correct myself and say, sorry, we drew. We drew because that's how I felt. It felt almost like a defeat when you kind of have to watch your rivals, pick up points afterwards, whereas you drop 2 points. But the overall feeling is disappointment. But it was still disappointment, but it was a dominant performance with a lot of chances. So there are a couple of positives, but mainly disappointment.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. I'm going to bring it to you because obviously I think Thiago Silva had a really good chance as well. Second half, I think he hit the post, didn't he? Yeah. Just in terms of your assessment of the game, was it 2 points dropped? Was it a game that we should have won? Maybe if we had a Lukaku or Werner in that sort of position supporting Havertz as well.
Thing for me, which really hurt was it wasn't an expected draw. If you watch the whole game, there was at no point was I watching the game thinking we're going to concede or we're looking a bit leaky at the back or we're looking a bit vulnerable. Like the Brentford game. If we had conceded in the Brentford game, I kind of would have expected it. I was at some point I was thinking maybe a header's going to go in for one of those long throw-ins. They're putting us under the cosh. With the Burnley game, I was about to fall asleep. There was a point during the game I had it on and I thought, okay, this game is fading out now, and we look solid. We look comfortable. We might even nick a goal ourselves, but I just wasn't expecting that goal to come through. From that perspective, it was extremely negative. However, it came at a good time. It did come at a good time. Obviously, we saw the results in the other games, and it doesn't seem like again, I don't want to get too excited, but it doesn't seem like we're going to concede every week. It doesn't seem like this is a thing where, based on previous games, we're getting used to conceding and stuff. So throughout a 38 game season, you're going to get a few bad games. You're going to get a few results that can't go your way. You have to be realistic about it. And I feel like because of other results, this is something that we kind of just have to push to the side and move forward. Because if you dwell on stuff like this and you start thinking, we've conceded, we might concede again, we're not scoring enough, our attackers are out, you can get into a mind frame of being victims of your own failure, and then eventually teams come and they think, okay, you know what, we're on them. They're vulnerable now. They haven't got a striker. They've conceded a goal, so maybe we can go and get 2 now. So I kind of think you have to look towards positives. Attackers are coming back. That's always a positive. We've done this with, I'd say, 5 or 6 players from the first team out injured. If you look at, you got Kovacic, Werner, Lukaku, Mason Mount,
Pulisic as well, just coming back to fitness. Yep.
And if you look at other teams around us, if they had that many injuries, it would be very, very evident. We've been now top for 4 weeks, is it? I think it's a whole month. Not a lot of people are talking about that. A lot of people might say, at the start it was, Man City had a bad game, but watch when they catch up and watch when they, you're going to concede soon and you're going to this. And now it's a month. And before we know it, it might be 2 months. And this is the kind of mentality I'm talking about. We have to kind of stay in this positive mentality because things are going well for us. And even in the times that they haven't been going well through injuries, we've managed to sustain the lead at the top of the league. So for me, it was a blip, but it's not something I'm going to dwell on.
Yeah, I agree. But I agree with both of you. I think it was. You look at those run of fixtures that we've had throughout sort of end of October and even now, through November. You look at those fixtures, and I think people like to say they're easy or winnable games. And Burnley's a very, very, very tough team to play against. They like to be very defensive. They set up to make it difficult for teams as well, and they did that. They executed that really well. For the goal, I do feel like we defensively we were poor at that minute. We switched off. I think it was Rudiger who played. I can't remember who played on side, but it was just that lapse in concentration. But it is one of those things. And to be honest, I think it is probably obviously fortunate for us that other clubs, Liverpool being the biggest one, dropping points in the same weekend. And, it does. I agree with you, Theo. It did feel like a defeat to me because of the expectations before the game. I did think, it's 3 points. You kind of almost go into those kind of games. I think no disrespect to Burnley, but it's just Burnley. You expect to get the 3 points, especially on the form that I think they're 9th or they were 19th in the league ahead of that game. So you kind of expect to get 3 points based off just the form that we're in and the form that Burnley were in as well. So it is a blip. I think every team's having that this season. I did say early in the season that there is going to be no easy games this season. There's no such thing as an easy game because, you've just mentioned as well the injuries that we've had and we've been able to sustain that sort of momentum, which I think is brilliant. But you do have to take those kind of losses, and it does. I know it's a draw, we got a point, but it does feel like a big loss. But I'm optimistic. Obviously the international break's coming now, and it is. The only downside, which we'll touch on later, is obviously the players that have come back from injury have all gone to their respected nations to play. So, fingers crossed, the likes of Pulisic, including the travel that he's going to have to do to get to play football for USA, that doesn't hamper him when he comes back. But in terms of the game itself, I couldn't really fault anyone for us. I agree. Barkley had a brilliant game. Obviously, good to see Kante kind of back in that role that he plays as well. But it was just a blip for me. It was a poor game in terms of the result, but I thought the way that we played was really good. So, you can't really fault us for that. But, bit of a break now, and I know I can only speak for myself, but the internationals, when they come round, it's depressing. It's depressing. It's grey skies all over the Premier League, but I can't wait for them to be out of the way. But we'll talk about internationals shortly. But I want to talk about 2 ex-Chelsea players one being the manager. And we'll start with Frank Lampard, who has been heavily linked with Norwich. I think he's held talks with them Monday. Theo, I'll come to you because I know you're a big fan of. Well, we're all big fans of Lampard. I hope definitely can see him back at Stamford Bridge in some capacity at some point. But Theo, I'm going to ask you: is it the right fit for Frank Lampard? He's had his time out now. He's sort of reflected on his time at Chelsea. To come back in at Norwich, he was struggling in the Premier League. Is it the right role for him to take?
Well, firstly, I think there is a bit of truth in this, story or rumor, because I think Fabrizio Romano said that talks had begun between Lampard and Norwich. So there is some truth behind it. And do I think it's the right fit? I do think Frank Lampard is better than Norwich, if I'm completely honest. He's managed Chelsea in the Champions League, so maybe his levels are, above Norwich. But at the same time, he does have to bring that level slightly down now because Chelsea is the best of the best. And we saw that Lampard at times as manager of Chelsea. It pains me to say it, but he did struggle at times, and he didn't really have all the, the dressing room backing him. Maybe he struggled with, the winning some players over, but it's going to be a difficult job if he does take it. Norwich are rock bottom of the Premier League right now. I think they won their first game over the weekend against Brentford. But I do think there's some interesting players you can work with, particularly a Chelsea loanee in Billy Gilmore. I think you'll get the best out of him at Norwich, and maybe even, while Daniel Farke was still there were stories that he'd come back to Chelsea in January or they'd terminate his loan. Whereas should Lampard take over, I think he would, see out the loan until June. So that's exciting from a Chelsea perspective, get the best out of Billy Gilmore. But at the same time, I do think, I do still think Norwich will get relegated, Lampard or not. So it's almost like, does Lampard want to have a relegation on his CV with Norwich? And I don't think he wants that. I think he takes a lot of pride now in the clubs he manages and, the results he gets, especially after managing Chelsea. So I think a small part of him wants almost a better club than Norwich. No disrespect to Norwich, but, that's why maybe the Villa job may be more appealing to him. But there's other candidates, I think, in Lucien Favre and John Terry that are linked with the Villa job. But from a Chelsea perspective and a footballing perspective, I'd just love to see Lampard managing back in the Premier League. So I say go for it.
Yeah, so it's a good point you make around the sort of, obviously, just looking at the table now, I think obviously Norwich are on 5 points with Newcastle, they're rock bottom, but they're only 5 points off safety, which you look at Newcastle, Eddie Howe going there, they might get a few points there, but I think for me personally, I don't know. I think for me, do I want to see Lampard struggle with Norwich? It's a big gamble because I think if they get relegated, I don't think anyone would necessarily blame Lampard for that relegation because you could almost say they're down now the way that they're playing at the moment. So I think it could work in his favour if they go down. You look at the likes of Bournemouth now at the moment. I know they're doing really well in the Championship. And Norwich tend to do very well in the Championship, so it could actually be a blessing in disguise. He goes back down to the Championship, regroups, brings in the players that he wants to bring in. The spotlight's going to be almost off him, if he goes down or if Norwich go down as well. So, Hyde, I'm going to ask you the same question in terms of Lampard. What's your thoughts? Does he take the job? Does he wait for a better opportunity to come up in the Premier League?
I know you said 5 points. They're 5 points away from safety, but to be realistic about it, they're going to get relegated. Whether it's Frank Lampard or whether it's Steven Gerrard coming in, I see nothing in that Norwich team apart from our Billy Iniesta. I see nothing in that Norwich team at all to tell me that there's even hope that they may even put a challenge towards survival. If I'm honest with you, I was at the game at Stamford Bridge when we put 7 past them, and probably the worst performance I've ever seen from an away team at Stamford Bridge. It was embarrassing. It was absolutely embarrassing. It was good for us. Good day out, loads of goals, Mason Mount hat-trick. But there was a point when it hit 6-0. I was looking at their team and I thought, none of them want to be here. None of them are interested. And obviously, the way football is going these days, that's going to reflect on the manager. I think Lampard coming in might give them a bit of a boost in terms of effort, playing for a manager. But look at the individuals in that team. I might be wrong, but I think they're going to get relegated. And if they get relegated, he's setting himself up for quite a tricky career. Is he going to get them back up? If he doesn't, is he going to stick in the Championship? If he sticks in the Championship, is a Premier League team going to be interested in him? is he then going to be a Championship manager for the rest of his career? So it could define him. Not that he's the reason that Norwich are in the position they're in, but being attached to a club like this, I think it could define him. And personally, if I was Lampard, I would stay away from Norwich. Either go to a good team in the Championship, which is, got ambitions, looking to get places, has owners that are going to fund him, has owners that want to get places. Or for me, I'd go abroad. I'd manage abroad if I was him, even if it's a, Premier League style team abroad, but not at the top level. Go, understand people's mentalities, see what it's like out there, see what players are like. And I think he can then bring that into a lesser team in the Premier League and then adopt his own style. But for me, if he does go to Norwich, it's not going to be good. It's not going to be good.
So it is a massive gamble. It is, and if he pays off and he keeps Norwich up, and then they do give him a bit of money. I know that I'm sure they've spent quite a bit already. But in terms of Frank Lampard, it is a massive gamble because, like you say, you could end up with him sort of floating around and swapping around Championship clubs. But
sorry, just to cut you off, you just got to look at before Frank Lampard, what type of club they are. They're very comfortable getting relegated every year and coming back up and getting relegated every year. At no point have we ever seen them, come into the Premier League and then their owners come and say, all right, boom, we're going to put in this amount of money. We're going to inject this money. We're now going to aim for survival. We're now going to aim for 15th, 14th, 13th. I've never seen that from a Norwich.
It's a yo-yo club.
That's it. And that's got nothing to do with Lampard. But this is what he's going to adopt. And that comes from the top. So for me, I think he needs a club with much more ambition. Yeah, much more ambition.
Yeah. Let's move on and speak about the captain, the leader, the legend, like to call him. He's back on Twitter. He's on Twitter. He's not back.
Is that his account?
Twitter.
Is that his account?
Yeah. It's his official account. He's on Twitter. He's given the banter already. I think he's 3 days in. He's giving banter to fans who are trying to give him banter, and he's matching the banter. But we're talking about John Terry. If anyone's not sure who we're talking about, he's not top of the wish list at Villa from what I've been hearing. Obviously, we're talking about Dean Smith and Craig Shakespeare, who have both left Villa. But John Terry, kind of in the talks for the role at Aston Villa, I think, with Steven Gerrard and Roberto Martinez, who are probably more suited for me, in my opinion, to take that job on. But I'll throw this one out. Haidar, I'll come to you first. In terms of John Terry, again, very similar to Lampard, can you see him fitting into Villa? Does that make more sense because he's already been at the club, the players that know him, he understands the system there already? Does that seem a bit more of a better fit for John Terry?
So the way I see it is Villa had a great season last season when he was assistant manager. And when he left, we saw a massive decrease in their performances, especially at the back. Especially in defence. They're leaking goals like no tomorrow right now. And I think obviously that came from John Terry. John Terry shored up their defence. I think he demands respect that Lampard doesn't, if that makes sense. I think he's ready to go with people if they don't give him what he wants. I think he's ready to get ugly. I think he's ready to... He's a bit old school in that sense. And I think he learned a lot of Dean Smith with that. I think Villa is set up for him. I think Villa is set up for him more than perhaps Norwich is for Frank Lampard, purely because he's familiar with the players. I think he's already gained a lot of the players' respect. And I think his defensive attributes will set him up and give him a foundation to kind of push that club forward. With regards to Steven Gerrard, I know he's been linked heavily with Villa. I was listening to Ali McCoy today on Talk Sport saying that if he does take the Villa job, it could affect his Liverpool job in the future because he's more set up to succeed at Rangers than he will be at Villa. And I think he's always got one eye on Liverpool. Naturally, he's thinking when, Klopp right now obviously is the main man, one of the best managers in the world. But there will be a point where he leaves. And I think that's going to be set up perfectly for Gerrard to come in. Now, does he want to come into Liverpool, mid-table at Villa, or does he want to come in having 1, 2, 3 championships at Rangers? I think the Rangers one suits him more. So for me, John Terry at Villa is a good fit, personally. I don't know what you guys think, but for me, it's just because of his mentality.
Yeah. I think he was saying the same thing when we spoke about it, Theo, at the weekend, or it might have been yesterday. But you were speaking and saying, obviously, he's ready for that step up from being the assistant. He should get a job within the Premier League. I think you were saying on Saturday or Sunday. But do you still agree with that? Do you think this makes more sense for John Terry to go back to Villa Park in that managerial capacity?
100%. I'd agree with Hader. I think it's a really good fit. I almost felt like when both Lampard and Terry retired, Terry was more ready to be a manager than Lampard was. And I think there was an interview with Fernando Torres after Lampard became manager of Chelsea, and they asked him, how do you feel about it? And he said, obviously, I'm really happy. He's my friend. I'm happy to see him manage the club I used to play for. But if I'm also honest, I'm a bit surprised, because Lampard used to be very quiet in the changing room. He wasn't as much of a leader when it came to giving team talks as John Terry. So for a manager role, I think John Terry is a lot more ready than Lampard is. And I think, as we mentioned, he knows the Villa team. He knows the Villa players. He only left, I think, in the summer. And I think he left because he wants to be manager. He no longer wants to be assistant manager. And he's had about maybe a 4 or 5 month break now. And I think he's ready to be, manager again now. And I do think, as Ida said, they've looked terrible, Villa, at the back since he's left. So he does bring that kind of defensive stability to the team. Whether he's ready for a Premier League job or a Championship job, I don't know. I'd like to maybe see him start off in the Championship with a Nottingham Forest type of team, like we discussed in another episode, and then maybe bring them, take them to the playoffs or really establish himself as a respectful manager, and then maybe get into the Premier League. But if this Villa job is ready for him, he knows the players, he knows the fans like him, then maybe I say go for it as well. But maybe
the board know him.
The board know him
as well. There isn't that stranger relationship. What type of person are we going to get into the club? What sort of personality is he going to be? Yeah. There's open relationships already.
Yeah, and like Norwich, I think they have ambition. Villa, they want to stay in the Premier League. They got into the top 10. I think they finished 10th last season, and they want to establish themselves now as one of those top 10 teams in the Premier League. And I think it's a good move.
They have a very wealthy owner, by the way.
They do.
Yeah, they do.
Very wealthy owner,
Yeah. But then other candidates, I think I've read about Roberto Martinez this morning, Lucien Favre, ex-Borussia Dortmund manager. So they might want to go with someone with a bit more experience. But personally, I don't rate Martinez at all. I think he's almost brought this Belgium team, down. So I don't see why.
Yeah, I
agree.
Maybe Villa is his level kind of mid-table team. So I don't know if that's what they want to go for. If they want to strive for ambition, maybe get a young manager who will bring a new identity, John Terry, or a more experienced manager who's actually worked with a top 3 team in Bundesliga. I'm talking about in Lucien Favre or Gerrard. I do agree. Maybe it will make his big dream move to Liverpool less likely in the future, but at least it will bring him to the Premier League. It will bring him back to England, and it will put him in a spotlight for other Premier League clubs in Liverpool. So should Klopp all of a sudden underperform, Gerrard's almost there in the shop window in the Premier League for them. But it's not like he's going to Man United or Everton. He's going to Aston Villa. So I don't think it will completely ruin his relationship with Liverpool. But I would love to see John Terry at Villa more than I'd like to see Lampard at Norwich.
Yeah.
It makes more sense, I think. The points that both of you have raised, it makes complete sense. My only worry is that, again, I think Villa at the moment, they're 16th. They're 2 points from relegation as well. So it's a big job. When he takes that on, he's still got a massive task on his hands. He's obviously going to go back and sort that defence out if he takes the job on. But look, it's John Terry. He's definitely a big voice. You can tell that when he was at Chelsea. You can see that the impact he had at Villa.
Villa, even when he was on the touchline as an assistant,
vocal.
He was more vocal than Dean Smith.
Yeah.
He was laying into players, celebrating, and as a player, when you see a man on the touchline like that, it's very Jurgen Klopp like, heart on sleeve, ready to go to war for the players. Yeah, exactly. And sometimes you get a reaction, those type of managers get reactions from players, rather than the type of managers that just, don't show emotions, stay at a distance away from the players, don't know what the manager's thinking, always second guessing what the manager's thinking, unhappy, not knowing whether they can talk to them or not. We know John Terry, and we don't know him personally, but you know what I mean? Like, we know what type of mentality he has, and he's not going to shy away from anything.
You almost see that he's definitely not just he's got the tactician, the football brain, but he's also a man manager as well. I think, you see that on and off the field. You're seeing it when he was at Chelsea as well, and again when he was at Villa. So it makes more sense. I just don't know whether the board will overlook, a Steven Gerrard or a Roberto Martinez. I think they're the two front runners, and I think if any of them turn that down, Gerrard says I want to stay for Rangers and win another trophy there. Or Martinez, I agree. I think he hasn't done the best at Belgium. I expected a lot from that squad, and I feel like the squad's come to a period now where some of the players are aging. You look at Eden Hazard or someone like that. The squad's aging slightly, so he hasn't utilised the squad as best as I think he could have. I would have expected him to win a major, a Euros or something with that squad, but they didn't. So. It's going to be interesting. I think we'll probably see a bit more after the international break who gets what job.
How good would it be though to have them both in the Premier League?
Lampard and
John Terry.
My shout was I said to Theo at the weekend, why not just have JT as the assistant for 1 year somewhere and have Frank Lampard as manager, or vice versa. But I think Lampard as manager, JT is the assistant, and then they can just roll in, keep them there together. And then when Tuchel, if he ever decides to leave, we just roll them back into Stamford Bridge with that experience there. It would be brilliant. It'd be a match made in heaven. We all want to see it at some point. But I think obviously John Terry more geared up, I think, to manage. And the task at Norwich is crazy. So let's hope Lampard runs away from it as quickly as possible. But
just a quick question: has Sam Aladdice retired?
No.
Relegation. I think he has, but he's come out of retirement about 20 times.
Because I can see him ending up at Norwich. If I'm honest,
Big Sam.
If you want to be saved from the drop, get Aladdice. Honestly, if you want, that's why Newcastle. For me, they shouldn't have got Howe. They should have got Aladdice. If they want to,
West Brom.
Unless you're West Brom, true. But Newcastle will want to get relegated.
He did come in quite late to West Brom. I think it was.
But they are the great escapes. They like a good great escape at West Brom. But that was a bit too much for them. But talking about internationals, we've spoke about it slightly on here already. But I'm in shock. I can't be honest. I've got to be honest. Loftus-Cheek, for me, maybe because I'm biased and he's Chelsea, but I think he's done a lot of work, not just in terms of international level, but to be even considered as a regular starter for Thomas Tuchel, who didn't really see him in the plans at the start of the season. He's got himself back in the Chelsea squad. He started really well. He's played really well. Same with Conor Gallagher on loan. I'm surprised that none of these two are even considered to be in the England squad. But Theo, I'm gonna throw it to you first. What is your thoughts on Loftus-Cheek being exiled from England? Is it Southgate just being Southgate, which we know he likes to do? I like to pick players on form, but actually I'll just pick my mates.
Yeah, I do think there's a bit of favoritism involved. He has his favorites. I think he said how much he rates Smith Rowe in the last international break, but didn't pick him because he was in the younger squad. Whereas now he's been picked because I think Mount, Rashford, and a few other players have dropped out. But at the same time, I do think Loftus-Cheek has had, every time he's played, he's impressed. He's almost put in a man of match performance. Whether Southgate looks at goals and assists, and picks his players based on that. But then in that case, why are you not picking Gallagher? And, because Gallagher's got the goals, he's got the assists, he's got the man of the match performances as well. So I'm a bit shocked for both players. I do think this England squad is perfect for Loftus-Cheek. We're missing that kind of tall, physical, player that can sit in front of the midfielders and drive up the ball to a Harry Kane, to a Rashford, to a Sterling. And I do remember even in the 2018 World Cup when he was picked and when he went to Russia, he was brilliant in the few games he did play. I think he played against Panama and was brilliant in that game. And now that he's rediscovering his form and his resurgence, I think this is, the perfect opportunity for him to get back involved in the squad. And I think come Qatar this time next year, World Cup next winter, almost December, I think I'll be very, very surprised if both those players aren't in that England squad.
Do you agree?
I'm going to throw a spanner in the works. I don't agree. I'm going to be honest with you guys.
This is why you're on here today.
That's not to say I don't rate him highly, and I don't think he's going to be one of the most, amazing servants for Chelsea if he carries on this path. However, I do think he hasn't proved himself to that extent yet to be getting in front of the likes of Smith Rowe, even Conor Gallagher. Some of the boys that are already in the England team, Grealish, Foden, Mason Mount. We've seen it with England. They have so much talent. They have so much talent. And before we talk about Loftus-Cheek getting into that team, there needs to be a different manager for a squad like this, because you're just not going to get the best out of everyone when you've got someone as limited as Southgate. And I think that's the reality. I think England have the best international squad in the world. And I think they can put out probably 3 starting 11s that would compete. They're that good. However, with Loftus-Cheek, a few things I would say is I would personally judge him and back him for the England squad once he's cemented his place in the Chelsea team with a full squad. So, when Kovacic is back, Mount's back fully, Kante, Jorginho, once he's then getting in front of these boys at Chelsea consistently, I would then, and he's performing the way he is performing now, I would then push for him to be joining the team. I don't know if you guys are going to agree with me on this. I do think he's lacking end product.
I think I mentioned that on the last episode.
But he has it in his locker. He has it in his locker. We saw it in the Europa League campaign. He scored hat-tricks. He scored goals. In that Sarri season, he was scoring in the Premier League when he was playing. He has it in his locker.
100%. We now need to see it consistently in the Premier League going forward. He's no longer that 18-year-old teenager breaking through. He's no longer a future prospect, which we can sit here and say, in a few years, he's going to be this, and with the competition around him, and with the competition starting so young with these boys these days, boys, at 2021, they're hitting levels which are like prime levels, and I think with him, his drive is probably best in the league. The way he drives past players, the way he just sprints past players. It's just when he gets in that final third, I think his brain just gets a bit jumbled up. He hasn't got that clear vision, that clear picture of a Mount, of a Smith Rowe, Foden. And I know he is a bit different, but he's not a defensive mid, is he? He's not going to sit and hold like a Jorginho. He's more of a Kovacic, where he's box to box and he needs to deliver in that final third. I'm not saying I want him to get 15 or to 10 goals a season, but those
just
assists
contribute a bit more.
Those assists needs to come up, and he needs to just have a better picture of the pitch. And I think once he does that and he breaks into the Chelsea team consistently, for me, that's when we can talk about him getting into the England team.
Yeah, so it's a fair shout. I think he's it's one of the things that I definitely mentioned, I think, on the last episode around his an end product. He has to improve that. I do think he's done enough to definitely warrant being mentioned amongst the players you mentioned. Even Smith Rowe, I think arguably does deserve a call up to the England squad, but I just think Loftus-Cheek should also be in that conversation as well. But you can only take so many players, so I understand a snub, but just the fact that he seems to always be the bottom of the list. Even Conor Gallagher, I think, has just done as well as Smith Rowe. I think if not better.
The good thing is, the 2008, Theo, you were saying this 2018 World Cup. The signs are there that Southgate likes him. Mm-hmm. He had a great season at Crystal Palace. He wasn't the best player in the Premier League at Crystal Palace, but he had a decent enough season at Crystal Palace for Southgate to turn around and say, I want. And don't forget, Southgate had these boys at the under-21s. So I think he has a good relationship with the young boys, and I definitely don't think he's going to freeze him out. But I think Southgate's opinion is more, I need to see what you do at your club. You need to be the main man at your club before you start, come to talk about England.
The one thing that does worry me about Southgate is you look at almost every single player that went to the Euros this summer. Maybe aside from Declan Rice, they've almost all underperformed.
They have, haven't they? Have you noticed that? Yep.
Yeah, you look at Rashford, he's underperformed. You look at maybe Grealish, Kane,
yeah.
All the centre backs that were there, Stones, Mings, Cody, and you're thinking they're still getting called up.
Luke Shaw looked like prime Roberto Carlos in the Euros, you know?
Tomori should definitely be in that squad for me.
Tomori's another shout,
AC Milan. And the fact Tyrone Mings is ahead of him, and I think I said this to you, Theo, as well, you know, the fact that Tyrone Mings is ahead of him just tells you that Southgate doesn't necessarily look further afield than England's, because, you know, I watched Tomori recently in the Milan derby, I think on Sunday, and didn't put a foot wrong. You know, and he does that consistently for AC Milan as well. It's just a consistent, 9 out of 10, 8 out of 10 performance. But, you know, he's always overlooked for that.
You know what it is with Southgate? The media's jumped on so much how he's brought this unity and this harmony and this collective group of players who are all playing in different clubs in the Premier League, and all of a sudden they're coming to England and there's a bond, and I think he's clinging on to that. You know, he's kind of saying, okay, I've got these boys. They're making me look good in the media. They're making me look like I've united it. It's the right personalities everywhere. And I think he's sticking to those personalities. And I think when new personalities are coming in, he's a bit weary that would he come in and disrupt this? Will he come
the harmony of the squad? And
I think he's clinging on to that.
Yeah, but then again, he did kick out, not kick out, but Dele Alli and Eric Dyer are nowhere near the squad now. So there is signs that if you underperform in the Premier League, you won't get called up.
They're rubbish, mate. Honestly,
But then on the flip side as well, one of the things he's always pushed and promoted is he picks players based off form, which he's clearly not doing, because you've just named obviously Harry Kane. I understand Harry Kane going, actually, because
captain, you can't really drop him.
Yeah,
it's the media. I think it's more what the media would do and how the media would react if he dropped players like this. It would then be, you know, war in the England camp. Are they going to get back? Southgate's lost the squad, and I think he's just trying to kind of maintain it all. He's a great man manager. Personally, I think he's a great man manager, but when it comes to the tactician side of things, he's lacking.
Quick question I'm going to ask you before we move on to our last bit of the episode. But in terms of Conor Gallagher, I think we spoke about it, Theo, before, in terms of Billy Gilmour and Conor Gallagher at the end of this season. What are our expectations for them? Because I think we kind of said we can't necessarily bring them both back, because I think one will, for me personally, I can almost see Conor Gallagher staying at Palace on a permanent deal after the loan deal's done. But obviously, we'd love him back, but would you like to see him back? Can you see that happening? Do you think that's going to happen?
I know they're slightly different positions, but I think the next player we're going to touch upon after this, I don't think we'll buy him permanently, which will free up a spot for Conor Gallagher. So I do think he'll be back at Chelsea next summer.
I'm going to throw that over to you as well. What's your thoughts?
Only thing with Conor Gallagher is he needs to be in a team where he's playing 38 games a season. He's that good. Honestly, he's that good. Yeah. You look at him at Palace and he's the catalyst. He's literally that energy. He's buzzing around. He's whipping balls left, right, and centre. He's taking shots at goal with, you know, that energy. And I think he is Vieira on the pitch. I'm not comparing him to Vieira, but I think Vieira's message that he's trying to get, the way he's trying to get his players to play, I think it's coming through Gallagher. Completely different players, just in case anyone sits there thinking, no, he's comparing him to Vieira and stuff like that. Nothing like that. But I think Vieira's message and the way and his style of managing is coming through Conor Gallagher, and I think he's got a brain on him. Honestly, I don't think he's just a footballer where it's just, you know, nice stuff. He's got a mature head on him, and he's the type of player that needs to be playing 38 games a season. If he's not going to get that at Chelsea next season, he needs to go out on loan again, for me. Yeah. But the loan move would need to be with a bigger club.
Yeah. The one thing I was going to say, very, very quickly, is Mount didn't have a Premier League loan. He was at Derby before his first season in the Premier League. His first season under Lampard in the Premier League with Chelsea, he was average. He wasn't the Mount that we know now. Whereas Gallagher now has had 2 loans in the Premier League. So I'm arguably thinking he's ready now to play for Chelsea. But as you said, he needs 38 games.
He's ready. I personally think he's ready to come in Chelsea. I think his intellect as well will suit well with Tuchel. The fact that, you know, Tommy Tuchel wants his players to react in a way that he's teaching them. And I think we've seen with a few players that don't respond, you're out. He's not type of an emotional manager. He's no sentimental with any players. It's my way or the highway. And I think with Gallagher, he would literally listen to everything he's being coached.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'd love to see him back. I agree with what you said. 38 games this season is what Gallagher needs, and I don't think at Chelsea the way we're overly complimented in that position already. I've obviously seen comments there around Declan Rice as well, but we're over complimented in that position already, and I just don't.
I'm gonna say something quite controversial as well. I think he can challenge Mount for his position. I know for me, Mount is honestly, I love him. I absolutely love Mount. Academy boy from young, and definitely going to have a career at Chelsea. But in terms of consistency, in terms of having an overall midfield mentality, if Conor Gallagher comes in and it's between him and Mount, on the way we're seeing it right now, there's no reason why he wouldn't be getting in front of him. And I think that competition is healthy, personally.
Yeah. I think like Strip Bear's saying, I think for me personally, I agree. I think if it is a case of Gilmour and Gallagher come back, it is going to be healthy competition for those places. And I think, it's going to be an interesting summer as well, because I'm sure Tuchel would love to have both of them in the squad and probably add additions to that as well. I'm sure there'll be one or two additions and new faces we'll see at Chelsea. But one player that we did want to speak about before we wrap up, Theo brought this to my attention this morning, was Sam Aladdice back to Spain. Apparently the loan deal is expected to be terminated in January. Now, this is obviously down to probably a massive couple of factors. The fact that he probably hasn't settled in London as much as he would have liked to. He hasn't really, for me, and we've spoke about this before, Theo, that he hasn't really got the level of game time. But I did also caveat that with maybe Thomas Tuchel seeing something on the training ground that we're not seeing, that he sees, that is the reason he's not in the team. We don't know. But Theo, I'll throw it to you first. What's your thoughts on that if we do terminate, and the conversation we just had around Gilmour and Conor Gallagher as well?
I mean, as you said, we're almost over-complimented with players in that position. And I don't think it's a question of him not settling into London, because he's actually come out and said he loves London. His girlfriend's really happy in London, but he's just a bit confused to why he's not playing more games. But he hopes that will come with time. But now, come with time. It's been 3-4 months now, and he's only started 2 games, I think, I want to say. He did look impressive in his last League Cup start against Southampton, but at the same time, I think it is something Tuchel's seen on the training ground, or maybe he doesn't provide the same work rate as a Jorginho, Kante, or Kovacic. And Tuchel likes his midfielders to, I think, win the ball back within 5 seconds, which we see with those other 3 midfielders I've named, and maybe even with Gilmour at times. So I think he will stay this season. I can't see him going back to Atletico in January. We're going to have another handful of injuries in December with all the games that we've got to play. But at the same time, I can't see the move being permanent now. I remember I was sat here in I think when we signed him in August, September, and I said, brilliant move, 30 million buyback. We can buy him for 30 million come the end of the season, and we'll make that permanent. That's how sure I am. Whereas now I'm looking back at that myself, saying that, and I'm thinking that's never going to happen now. We've got Gilmour, who's ready. We've got Gallagher, who's ready, and we've got Sam Aladdice, who can't even get a game off the bench. So if I had to almost predict the future, which I've been very bad at lately, but I'm going to say it's going to be Gallagher and Gilmour in next summer, and Ziyech and Sam Aladdice maybe out.
Couldn't agree more with that, to be fair.
If you look at Diego Simeone's teams and the way they're set up, and the way again they represent him on the pitch, there's a reason Simeone was allowing Niguez to leave for me. And that was because he wasn't a pressing midfielder. He didn't have that type of intensity where it's 100 miles per hour for 90 minutes. He's more of a ball player. He's more of a 2, 3, 4, 5 touch player. That's not to say he's a bad player, but with Tuchel as our manager, he has no right being in that midfield for us. Absolute no right. I was at that Southampton game you were talking about, and he was better. He was better than his previous games. There's no doubt about that. But was he star man? Did he win the game for us? Was he the difference between us and Southampton in that game? No. So if in the lesser games he's not even able to stand out, I think I agree with you, Theo. Tuchel, I think, had a plan for him. He came in, and I think he's seen in training that I can't get out of him what I need to get out for this team to be set up the way I want my midfield to be set up. And for me, by January, I'm not trying to be, ruthless and stuff, but by January, and bring back Billy Gilmour. Billy Gilmour will learn he'll learn more with Chelsea for the next end of the season than he will at Norwich. So leave Gallagher at Crystal Palace for the season. I think he's doing great. I think if they finish in the top 10, Crystal Palace, that will be a lot down to Vieira, and that'll be a lot down to Conor Gallagher if he's playing at this rate. However, with Gilmour, he could come back with low confidence. He could come back, thinking, I've got so much to do to get back into this Chelsea team. Bring him back in now. There's going to be a few games, come the end of the season where you can throw Billy Gilmour in. And I think, going forward long term for Chelsea, it's better for us to get more out of Gilmour right now than a few months out of Saul.
I think we've just got to cut our losses with Saul. To be honest, I think I think we've mentioned before that he's. I've said it before that he's definitely, there's something that obviously Thomas Tuchel's seeing somewhere that he's obviously not impressed with, whatever that is. Because he definitely would have featured by now a bit more. I think he would have had a few more games, a few more opportunities to play, even come on as a sub. There's times where the opportunity is there for him to come on, and you'll see Ross Barkley or someone else come on before him, and that kind of tells you that he's definitely the bottom of the pile in terms of the players that we've got. And I agree. Like we said, Theo, I think maybe 2 or 3 episodes ago, maybe last episode, around Billy Gilmour, that time when there was all the talk about him being recalled in January. I think it makes perfect sense to have him back at Chelsea, because I think he is going to learn a lot more. He will get game time, because I think we've obviously still got a lot of, we're in all competitions. We've still got the Club World Cup as well to consider. There's a lot of football to be played, and I think he will get a lot of game time. We know what Billy Gilmour can do as well, and I think that's a massive key thing. But
even training with some of the players, he might not play as much as we've, but just training with a Jorginho, just training with a Kovacic, training with a Lukaku, his mentality will adapt, and it will grow. And this is what we need going forward long term, because we need winners, and we need winners to play around winners. And that's the only way he's going to learn for me.
Yeah, I do think obviously in the long term, Thomas Tuchel strikes me as someone who thinks, or he's already thinking about next season currently. So I think if that is the case, I think he'd rather have Gilmour back, knowing he can sort of embed him into the team this season slowly as well, not in terms of just throwing him straight into the deep end, but bring him in for a few of those games where you do need to rest 1 or 2 key players, bring him in or bring him off the bench and just incorporate him into the team that way. And then next season, we'll probably see a lot more of him. And I think that just means the plans have come, 6 months ahead earlier than expected. And I think it makes perfect sense for me. It's a shame for Sal, because I think there was definitely high expectations for him. I think, obviously before he came to the club, I hadn't really watched that much of him, to be fair, at Atletico, but you know of him, and you know that he I think when he played against us, there was expectations that he was going to do really well. And like you said, Theo, that sort of fee that we were expecting to pay for him, which we might still do, but for 30 odd million, we were saying that when we signed him, it was a bargain. So it's a harsh one, but it's a harsh reality, I suppose, of football and how it works in this day and age. That if it doesn't work out,
he'll get a move though. He'll get a move somewhere.
I
don't think he's going to go back and just sit on the bench and stuff. He'll play for a decent club, I reckon. It's just that he's not suited for our manager personally.
I do want to see him get a run of games in December before we make a decision in January, though. I do want to kind of judge him on a few more games. So I think it's very, very harsh from a fan
perspective. Would you risk it?
We've got, Brentford in the League Cup, maybe. We've got games every 3 days almost. So I think we've got to rotate. If not, we're going to get injuries to Kante, to Kovacic, to Jorginho. So I would play him in a couple of those games.
Yeah, we've got Zenit. Well, we've got West Ham. We've got Watford, West Ham, Zenit, Leeds, Everton, Wolves, Brentford in the cup. Then we've got Villa, Boxing Day, and then we've got Brighton. So December is compact. It's very compact, and I think he will get some games. But I almost look at that as is it too little, too late? I don't know if he's going to be able to impact that much in that short space of time. And
there's no indication to tell us that he's in the plan. Like you said, Barkley's coming on. Ziyech is coming on, all these players come, and he's always the last last call, and if it's a League Cup game, he might manage to play. I think the writing's on the wall for him.
And he didn't even get an appearance off the bench against Norwich, Newcastle, and Burnley,
Yeah,
which were
yeah.
arguably the three easiest games of the season.
Yeah. Mason Mount was ill on the bench, and he still came on against Burnley. You know, he wasn't 100%. So all these things, all these factors, I think it tells you where our manager's mentality is at with him.
Yeah,
it's a shame. It's a shame, though.
I agree. We're gonna wrap it up. I think that was a good episode. Obviously, Theo is always joining me, and Ada, thank you as well, because I know you've been itching to get involved.
Yeah, yes, pleasure, guys. Anytime, it's a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, and definitely we'll definitely have you back on. You know, hopefully make it a regular thing as well. But for those that are listening on Apple or Spotify, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram. So our Twitter is @FromTheShedEnd. That's all one word, and on Instagram is @FromTheShedEnd with underscores between each of the words as well. We're also on YouTube, so just give us a like, subscribe, comment, search for us From the Shed End on there as well. And again, if you're listening on YouTube or watching on YouTube, we're on Apple and Spotify as well. So make sure you search for us From the Shed End. And yeah, we'll definitely be back for next week. We've got a good episode, I think, lined up for next week as well. And we'll also be previewing the Leicester game, I think, as well at some point. So, and yeah, Strip Bear been in the comments since the start, so appreciate you as well. Obviously making a bit more entertaining for us. Not sure about Declan Rice anymore. He's brilliant for West Ham. I just don't know if he's going to fit into again a very over-complimented Chelsea midfield, but we'll see. Tuchel knows best, right? So yeah, look, make me them. There you go. Getting involved already. But this has been episode 35 of From the Shed End. As always, Theo, thanks for joining me. Hader, thank you again for joining us as well. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, guys.
And yeah, we'll definitely be back next week with episode 36. So until then, enjoy the rest of your week. And yeah, let's get these internationals out the way so we can get back to Premier League football.